Shalom Aleichem, everybody. We are up to Daf Nun Aleph today. We start from Daf Nun Amud Beis. On the bottom, Amar of Yudah Merav. Avodah Zarah that you serve with a makal, with a stick, which means that you knock on an object in front of the Avodah Zarah, you make noise with this makal. So, Shovar makal b'faneho. Rav says if you break that stick in front of the Avodah Zarah, chayiv, you are chayiv. If you break the stick in front of the Avodah Zarah, you mamash chayav misa for being over the Avodah Zarah. Zorak makal b'fanel, then he's potter. So the Gemara says, so Abai said to Rava, why is breaking the stick chayav misa davlik and zvicha? Because it's parallel to shechting a korban the Beis Hamikdash. It's similar to shechting, right? You're breaking it into two. You're splitting it into two, just like shchita. Zorak nami havalike and zrika. Zorak, when you throw a makal, it also has the similarity to zrika's dam of the karbanos and the mizbeach. So it's also ke'en avodas pnim. So why would it be chayav mis on that? Amalei. So Rabbi Zata Abaya, yeah, not really. Be'ina zrika mishtaberes. When you throw the blood, you sprinkle the blood on the mizbeach. The blood disperses, right? It separates into different droplets. So that's zrika called zrika mishtaberes. It breaks apart. Velekin over here by zrika's makol, you don't have that element of mishtaberes, and therefore you're potter because it's not ke'en avodas pnim. Says the Gemara, Esavei sofas lot soya. What if you fed avodah zarah soya? Tosfos says you smeared it. Sofas is miloshen smearing. Rashi says it's feeding. Or your menasach, you poured a bucket of meraglayim in front of it. Chayiv, you're chayiv. Bishloima of vitchel me meraglayim. Understand why you chayiv misa by meraglayim, because rika mishtaberes. You have the similarity of avodas pnim because it breaks apart when you sprinkle it. Elos tsoya, my zrika mishtaberes ikka. By tsoya, right? It's hard. It's solid. What do you have? Zrika mishtaberes? Gemara says no, but tsoya lacha. When you have tsoya lacha, loose excrement, which if you throw it, it could break apart, and it parallels zrika's dam on the mizbeach, which is zrika mishtaberes. Says the Gemara. So this chiddush of Rav, which is a shviras makal, is chayiv misa because it's ke'en avodas pnim, which is shchita. That should be a machlokas tanaim. The Gemara says, a braisa shachad lachagav. Guy shechts a grasshopper for an avodah zarah. Rabbi Yehuda mechayiv. Rabbi Yehuda says you chayiv misa v'chom apoitrim. My love, what's the machlokas? B'hakam eflagi. The marsav minika and zvicha. Rabbi Yehuda holds that when you shecht a chagav, that parallels shchita of a carbon in the Beis Hamikdash, and therefore it's ke'en avodas pnim and you're chayiv. And the same would be shviras makal like Rav, right? A marsavar, the Chachamim say lo minika and zvicha. You don't say ke'en zvicha, and memela. Yeah, you don't say that shviras makal or shchitas chagav is ke'en shchita. They should be mechuyev misa on that. Elo ke'en avodas pnim. It's only if you mamish shecht an animal like avodas pnim that you're chayev misa. But the shviras makal, just because you break it apart into two pieces, that should echo a shchitas carbon in the Beis Hamikdash should be chayev misa for zoy vayit nisht. Gemara says loy. T'kula am lermin ken tzvicha. Everybody holds not like Rav. Elok and pnim binan. They hold that it needs mamish, an act that's literally similar to avodas pnim, and shviras makal doesn't qualify. You're potter from misa. V'shani chagav, a grasshopper is much different. Why? Yudah says that you can get away with. It's still ke'en avodas pnim because the tzavar of the chagav is doim l'tzavar behema, and therefore it still falls under the category of shchita ke'en avodas pnim, but shviras makal for sure not. So Amela, Rav has no shaykhis to this machlekes. Omer of Nachman, Omer Rabbi Baravu, Omer Rav, avodas kechavim she'oivdin oisa b'makal. Yeah, avodah zarah that you serve with a stick. Shiber makal b'fnei chayiv v'neseres. Here we add a word. It's osir b'hano. Why? Because it's takrivis avodas kechavim. Zorak makal b'fnei chayiv ve'eina neseres. If you just throw it, then you're chayiv misa, but it's not nesar. Now that's interesting. Earlier we said, yeah, that Zarek Makal is Potter. Why? Because Zrika Mishtaberes, you need Zrika Mishtaberes, that's not Zrika Mishtaberes. Amalei Rav of Nachmash Shiur Davlek and Zvicha, Zarek Nabalek and Zrika. So assuming that this is also Zrika Mishtaberes, right? That's why you Chayiv Misa by Zarek Makal. So Ibazoi, why isn't it Neseres? Bar says, Amalei Be'inan Zrika Mishtaberes Vileka. No, it's not a Zrika Mishtaberes. So if it's not a Zrika Mishtaberes, it cannot become Aser. Because Takrevis of it is only Aser if it fits the criteria of being similar to Avodas Pnim. But if it's not a Zrika Mishtaberes, then it's not similar to Avodas Pnim, and therefore it doesn't become Aser. So you'll ask, why you Chayiv Misa then? Why you Chayiv Misa in such a case? The teretz is because, I guess, it's Avodosa Bezrikas Makal. And that's taka of it. So in other words, you can have Avodah Zarah in one of two ways. Either serving Avodah Zarah. To be Chayiv Misa on serving Avodah Zarah could be done in one of two ways. One, it's Avodah B'kach. So if it's Avodah B'kach, that's the natural way. That's how people serve the Avodah Zarah. So even if the Avodah doesn't echo, isn't similar, doesn't parallel to the Avodah of the Beis HaMikdash, still you're Chayiv Misa because that's the derech of serving the Avodah Zarah. Another way to be Chayiv Misa is even if it's not Darka B'kach, it's not Avodah B'kach, but the Maisa that you're doing parallels the service of the Beis HaMikdash, then you're Chayiv Misa as well. So by Shviras Makol, it's not Avodah B'kach, right? But you're Chayiv Misa because it's Avodas Pnim. So once you tap into that Chayiv, because it's Ke'en Avodas Pnim, that carries an Isser with it as well. Takrevis, right? That becomes Isser as well. Because in order to be Yasser Ba'ano, it has to have the criteria of Takrevis Avodas Kechavim. That's Ke'en Avodas Pnim. But if it's not Ke'en Avodas Pnim and you just Chayiv because that's the way everybody serves it, then it's not Nesar. Now the Gemara says like this, Elam Miyato. If you're going to tell me that it's not Osir Bahana, Takrevis is not Osir Bahana unless it parallels the Avodah or Takrevis in the Beis HaMikdash, Avnei Beis Markulis B'maya Osru. Why should Avnei Beis Markulis be Osir? Yeah. L'chayra, by Avonim, right, you take an Avon, you throw it at the Markulis. It doesn't break. There's no Zrika Mishtaberes. There's no Zrika Mishtaberes. Why should it become Osir Bahana? Omalei, so Rav Nachman Torah, Afla Di Kasha, they had the same Kasha. She iltu Rav Ravu, Rav Ravu, Lechiba, Rav, Rav. They asked it to Rav. Omar Le, Rav answered, Nasek and Megadol of it is Kechavim. You're right. The stones that become Asr Bano, the stones that you throw at the Markulis, they don't become Asr Medin Takrevis. Because Takrevis, in order for it to become Asr, it has to be similar to Avodas Pnim, right? Which is Meshtaberes. The stones don't break. Zrika Meshtaberes you need. Over here it doesn't break. So why is it Asr? It's Megadol of it is Kechavim because you're expanding the Avodah Zarah. Now it's a bigger Avodah Zarah as a result of this rock. So the rock that you threw becomes Asr Bano because of the din of it is Kechavim Atzma, not within Takrevis. It becomes Avodah Zarah. That itself became part of the Avodah Zarah. Whereas that's very nice if you say that as soon as you turn an object into Avodah Zarah, it becomes Asr right away, even before you serve it. So this rock, as soon as you threw it, it becomes part of the Avodah Zarah, and even if nobody else served it yet, it becomes Asr Bano. But if you learn Elamanda Omar, Achte Oved, but if you learn like the other mandama that says it's only Asr Bano, Avodah Zarah is only Asr Bano until you serve it, Tishterei, Deloy Palcha. So even after I throw the rock at the Beis Markulis, it should still be mutter. Why? You're going to tell me it's Asr because it became part of the Avodah Zarah. Nobody served it yet. Avodah Zarah doesn't become Asr until somebody serves it. So why is it Asr right away? Omar Lei, so Rav Nachman said to Rav, you know why? Because Kol Achas V'Achas, Nasas of it is Kechavim, the Tekroivus L'Chaverta. Each stone that you throw, right, two things happen. Number one, that stone, as soon as it hits the Beis Markulis, it transforms into a piece of Avodah Zarah. So it becomes Asr B'Hana, it becomes part of the Avodah Zarah. So, okay, now tell me it's not enough to become Asr B'Hana because nobody served that stone yet. True. But when the next guy comes and throws, so that stone that he throws, it becomes part of the Avodah Zarah, but it also serves the prior stones. Every stone accomplishes two factors, two things. Number one, it becomes part of the Avodah Zarah, and it also serves all the stones that are already there. So, so your stone that you threw, right, becomes part of the Avodah Zarah, and it also becomes usher because the next guy who throws a stone, right, will serve with that zrika whatever is already there, and his stone will become Avodah Zarah until the next guy throws a stone, and then he'll serve this stone as well, and so on and so forth. Says the Gemara, so the last guy who throws a stone, his stone should be mutter ba'ana. Why? Because that stone will become part of the Avodah Zarah, but it won't become asr ba'ana because nobody else threw a stone afterwards. Amarle iyadatla zol shakli. You're right. Go figure out which one is the last stone that somebody threw, and that taka is mutter. Rashi says no. Even the last stone is asr. You know why? Because kol achas va'achas nasis tikroivus la'atzma v'tikroivus lachaverta. Each stone, it becomes part of the Avodah Zarah itself, but it also becomes a tikroivus la'atzma. It's boing ke'echad. It becomes part of the Avodah Zarah, and that throw of that stone is also serving itself. So Mamela becomes aser. Okay, so the Gemara writes Nan matzah b'roishek susamoisek heilem areilem mutarim. Person finds in the makulas, he finds, let's say, a beged, he finds money, he finds kelim. It's all mutter b'anam. Why is it all mutter b'anam? Mar's going to say in a moment. Parkila anovim, v'ator shel shabalim. You find clusters of grapes, or you find crowns made out of shabalim, of stalks of wheat, v'yenois, or wine, shmana v'saltas, or oil and flour, v'choldovish kiyotz b'korv l'gab mizbeach, anything that usually bring onto the mizbeach in the Beis Hamikdash, aser, because menastam, that's why they brought it to the markulas to be makriv to the markulas. So it's takrevis, you're not allowed to know. Bishloima yenis shmana v'saltas ikeken f'nim. Gemara asks, I understand wine, oil, and soilus and flour becomes aser b'ano mashim takrevis because, right, we said the criteria for takrevis to become aser b'ano is that it has to have ke'en pnim, the quality of ke'en pnim, that you bring that also, you do that also in the Beis Hamikdash. So you do yenos, shmana mislasis, right, mincha. V'ke ke'en zrika mishtaberes. You also have zrika mishtaberes as well. Right, you sprinkle it. Nisachayayin. Says the Gemara, it doesn't have either one. You don't bring a novim and a torshal shabalim in the Beis Hamikdash. There's no ke'en panim, and there's also no zikim mishtaberes. So why should we ask it mishum takrovis? No, when you cut it, so you have ke'en zvicha, right? You have ke'en zrika mishtaberes. You have that part to be asked to asrid bano because it's betzar metchila lekach. You harvested it to begin with for the Avodah Zarah. Okay. How do I know if somebody shechts a behema? That's a balasmum to Avodah Zarah that he's potter from misa, assuming that it's not darka bekach. Yeah, if it's darka bekach, that's a whole different conversation, right? It's chayiv misa because it's darka bekach. He did the avodah the way everybody else does the avodah. We're talking about it's not darka bekach. So l'menayin lo zevech behem balasmum lavedes kam shu potter. How do we know it's potter? Shnemer zevech lehem yochram bilti l'Hashem levadoi. It says bilti l'Hashem le'aser toilek en pnem. Only something that you'd otherwise be able to bring to Hashem, and you do it to the Avodah Zarah, that's when you're chayiv. A balmum you can't bring to Hashem. So since you can't bring it to Hashem, and it's not darka bekach, so maybe you're potter. What kind of balmum are we talking about? If it's doikin sheba'ayin, a cataract in the eye, Ben Noach can bring a doikin sheba'ayin, a behemoth that has a doikin sheba'ayin, onto a bama legavoya. So if you could bring it legavoya onto a bama, so lavetz chavim mibayi, so lavetz chavim avada. That's then he's chayiv misa. Certainly, you can bring it to Hashem. El b'mechusar aver kadir b'lazar. So obviously, we're talking about mechusar aver. It's a balmum where he's missing an aver. And like Rabbi Lazar said, how do we know that a mechusar aver is aser for ben Noach to bring to Hashem, to be makrav to Hashem? Shenemar umikol ochai mikol basar shnayim mikoil tavi latev lakasitach. By Noach it says, bring mikol achai. Now that's interesting. It's the extra two words over there. It should have said mikol basar shnayim mikol tavi latev. Right? From every animal you bring two. So what does it mikol achai? Only bring behemoths, right? that you could be makav l'gavaya. What's the criteria? Shechayin Rosh Yavar Inshallah. What do you mean? It's not available to darshan mechusar aver. You need for treifa, right? That you're not allowed to bring a treifa onto the teva. It has to be chai. It has to be something that can live beyond the ability of the treifa. Treifa only 12 months max. This has to be beyond that. Gemara says no. I'm l'chai zera nafka. Then I learned from l'chai zera. Treifa lamuta treifa. I know the Torah says l'chai zera pnei chol haaretz. It has to be able to reproduce, and a treifa can't reproduce. So I know the kol l'chai mechusar aver. Hanich lamadam treifa neiledas. You could only tell me you learn treifa with l'chai zera if you hold that a treifa can give birth. Elamando treifa yoledes ma'ikol meimar. If you say treifa yoledes, so you can't be mamayit from l'chai zera, because treifa could be l'chai zera. So it must be you're mamayit from the kol l'chai. So it's not available from mechusar aver. Amakra, Gemara says no. I have a different miyat for treifa from itach. It says itach. Itach b'doimin l'cha. Hashem said to Noach, bring only animals that are similar to you in the sense that they're not treifas. Just like you're not a treifa, they're not a treifa. So either way, I have the words Mikol Achai available to darshan Lamiyute Mechusar Aver. Gemara says, no, not so fast. You want to be Mamai Treifa from Itach, V'dom Noach Gufei Treifa. How do you know Noach wasn't the treifa? Now you can ask me, Noach lived many hundreds of years after the Mabul, right? So we know Noach wasn't the treifa. If he would have been a treifa, he would have died within the year. So okay, it's different types of treifas. Treifa chaya, it's called. So which means a treifa that kataka live longer than 12 months. Okay. So the Gemara says, Tamim ksev bey. It says the word tamim. So I know Noach was not a treifa. Maybe it means he was a tamim b'drachav in his ways, in his behavior. Tzadik ksev bey. No, it already says tzadik. Maybe bedrachav means character, and tzaddik means b'masav means action. Doesn't make sense. Okay, so you don't have proof from a pasuk that Noach was not a treifa, but Svara says he wasn't a treifa. Because why would Hashem be makban and say itach? Only bring something that's a treifa like you. What do you mean? You shouldn't bring shleiman. Rather not. So Mela, I know itach means b'doy melacha, which means you're not a treifa. So if you're learning from itach, so why do I need l'chaya zera? If I would have said that we're my treifa from itach, I would have said Hashem says don't bring a treifa so you have company, right? Otherwise they're going to die on you in the teva. So I want you to have company. It's just a good idea. I feel a zakah, I feel a stris, right? Doesn't mean not makpid that. Right, that you shouldn't bring a zakan or a saris. Kamash Malon, no. Don't even bring a zakan or a saris. Why? Because they can't reproduce, and we need these animals to reproduce after the mabul. So either way, bottom line, Mikol Achai is available for the drasha of Lamayit Mechusar Aver. So when Rabbi Yochanan says, what kind of balmum are we talking about? A Mechusar Aver. Says the Gemara, Omer Rabbi Lazar, Menayin l'shoichet behema l'markulas shu chayev. How do a guy shechts a real behema to a markulas that he's chayev? Now this is a difficult question because we're dealing with shchitas behema. Shchitas behema mamish, that's ke'en pnim. So even though, the derech avoida of markulas is to throw stones, and he comes with a whole different type of avoida, which is actually shechting a behema, should be chayiv misa, because we said earlier that there are two ways you can be chayiv misa when you're over the Avodah Zarah. One is you do whatever the natural way is to serve it. You serve like everybody else. Doesn't matter what that is. Then you're chayiv misa. The other way, even if you do something different than everybody else, it's not the derech, but as long as you do whatever is avodas pnim, right? Bilti l'shem lavadoi, then you're over and you're chayiv misa in that as well. There's no more ke'en pnim than shchitas behema mamish. So what's the kasha? And so the teretz is that when do we say that ke'en pnim is mechayev you misa if it's not avodah zakach? That's only if whatever the avodah of the Avodah Zarah is b'derech kavod. It's b'derech kavod. Whatever they do, they serve it b'derech kavod. So then, if you do something else, but you do it ke'en pnim, then you're chayev. But the Markulis is derech b'zayin. The whole avoid is derech b'zayin. So here, Belaz is not sure whether Shchitas Behema, which is Mamash Ken Pnim, would be Chayiv Misa on that. Would you be Mechuyev Misa on Avoida, which is Ke'en Pnim, when you do it to an Avodah Zarah, which the regular Avoida is only B'derech b'zayin. So the Gemara says, so how do I know that? That you're Chayiv, Shenemer Val Yizbechu Oid Azevcheim Laseirim. In Ein Lekadarka, I already know that you're not allowed to serve Avodah Zarah in a way that is natural for that Avodah Zarah to be served. So why don't you need Yizbechu Oid Azevcheim Laseirim? Now you're in L'Shlei Kedarka. So you could learn L'Shlei Kedarka, which means you shechta be'ema mamish, which is Ke'en Panim. When it's B'hol Ha'achyu Da'asa, I'm a boy like I need it for something else. Ad kan hu medaber b'kachim shekdishim shasas harabamas. Yeah, up until that point in the parasha of Shchutei Chutz, now la shechta, a carbon outside of the Azara, that's we're talking about when you're makdish the carbon after the Isser Bamas came into effect. Yeah, after Akamas HaMishkan. The Krivim b'shas Isser Bamas, but you also weren't just makdish it at that point, but you also makriv it. Shari Anshon Amor, Shenemra al Pesach al Moed Le'aviyoi. Einish Shemanu Azara Manayin Tamulayim Pentala L'Secha. K'dirav Amar Rebbe Law. Dam Rebbe Law, Kolbak Shnemer Shon Pen Va'alin L'Blei Sese. Mikan Ve'elech, U'medav V'katsh Shekdish b'shas Atar Bamas, Ve'kiv b'shas Isra Bamas. From that pasuk and onward, from the pasuk of Elizabeth Oid, it's mechadish, and that parsha of Shchutei Chutz. Once we get to the pasuk of Elizabeth Oid, it's mechadish even more than that. Even if you have a behemoth that you're makdish koydem Isser Bamas before Akamas HaMishkan, and you're makriv it after Isser Bamas, still you're over on Shchutei Chutz. Even if you bring a behemoth that you're makdish before, before the Isser Bamas, you should know Pnei Asada, Melamed Shekal Zvech, B'vam Shas Isser Bamas Malakos, Kilazech Pnei Asada. Still, it's like a Zvech Pnei Asada, and you're Chayiv. V'aviyim Lashem, the mitzvah say. The mitzvah say to be shechting dafke lefnei Hashem. In mitzvah loisah say, Menayin Tamad Leber Lois B'chayt Zevchayim. So anyway, the pasuk that you want to learn, you want to use to learn the halacha Rabbi Lazar of Shoichet Beim Al Makul Shu Chayiv is already taken for a different rasha, for Shchutei Chutz. Shchutei Chutz of an animal that you're makdish koydem Isser Bamas, and you're makriv after Isser Bamas. Because Tamad Leimer, the B'chayt Zevchayim, Yochel Yerush Karos, Tamad Leimer, Chukasam Tia, Zois Lehem, Zois Lehem, V'lei Cheres Lehem. In other words, you don't get Karos for it. But Al Kaponim, this pasuk of Elizabeth B'chayt Zevchayim is not available anymore. Amarava, Kribe V'lo Yizbechu. A kribe v'loy oid. There's an extra word, v'oy v'loy oid, right? So you can learn it for the Indian of Shchutei Chutz, right? V'loy yizbechu, a kribe v'loy oid. Okay, so now we have a makar for both drushes. Says the Heilige Mishnah, Matzah b'roisha ma'as k'sus ha'kelim ha'elam mutarin. If you find in a makulas, the head of a makulas, you find ma'is, mani, ksus, or kelim, it's mutter b'ano. Because you could assume, see in the Gemara, you could assume that he's using the Avodah Zarah for his own benefit. In other words, he wants the Avodah Zarah to hold it for him. But he didn't use it the other way around, to serve the Avodah Zarah. Then it's also because Manastam you have to assume that it was makriv to the makulas. How do I know that in the ratio of the Mishnah, where it's not also lanoi, it's not serving the Avodah Zarah, it's just on top of the Avodah Zarah? How do we know that it's mutter ba'ano? Amar v'chiyah bar Yosef, Amar Rashi, Kasav ha'chadam yatira shekatzev z'galem eitz ve'evan kesef zav asher emohem. Right, eitz ve'evan for sure is not lanoi. Yeah. It says you'll see all these objects asher emoim because of echadayim l'sachmit kesav zov aleihem, right? Kesav zov, it doesn't say eitz ve'evan over there. Okay, tzad. How do you reconcile this contradiction? One place it says kesav zov only, and the other one says also eitz ve'evan. Gemara says okay, tzad emoim dumid aleihem. Yeah, the pasuk of eitz ve'evan by emoim has to be similar to aleihem. Ma aleihem davar shal noi aser, only when it's lanoi, because kesav zov is always lanoi. Davar she'en shaloi mutter. But if it's not lanoi, if it's eitz ve'evan, it's mutter. Afim moim, Also, Imam, the pasuk of Imam is only when you have eitz ve'evan l'noi, but not if it's not l'noi. Whereas ve'ema aleim dumya de imahim, maybe do it the other way around. Darshan the opposite way. Ma imam kol ma she'imahim. Just like when it says eitz ve'evan, it doesn't have to be l'noi. So too, afaleim kol ma she'aleim, even if the kesav azov is not l'noi, it's also aser. Gemara says, "Imkein lo yomer aleim." So why would it aleim for that? Once I know, eitz ve'evan means even if it's not l'noi, why do you have to repeat? So it must be, from there you learn that it's only dvarim shel noi. It's serving, it's beautifying, it's it's adorning, adornments. I don't know if that's a word, but it's lanoi l'avodah zarah. That's what's aser. Gemara says, "Mo is davar shel noyu." Money is davar shel noi, right? So why is it mutter? Because kosher v'tola b'tzavara. We're talking about it's a pouch. Money's not even. It's not the money. It's not the gold and silver. The money, the coins. That is mamash on the Avodah Zarah. It's a pouch. So he's using the Avodah Zarah as a hook. Whereas still is davar shel nayu. A beggar is davar shel nayu. So why is it mutter? It's folded over and it's on the top of the head of the Avodah Zarah. For sure, not lanai. Whereas it's kli davar shel nayu. What about kli? Kli is also davar shel nayu. He put the kli, right, to cover, upside down, to cover, like almost like a hat, to cover the head of the Avodah Zarah, for sure, not l'nai. Anything that's inside the curtains of the Avodah Zarah, it's close. Afilu mayim melach oser. Even mayim melach, which is not usually l'nai, you don't put it there l'nai, it's oser. Why? Because you probably put it l'takroivis. Yeah, bought it as a carbon. So it's so close. Chutz lakal kolim. If it's outside of the curtains, davar shel noi aser she'en shel noi mutter. That's only davar shel noi. But if it's not shel noi, then it's mutter because it's not shel noi, and it's also probably not l'takroivis because it's outside of the climb. Rabbi Yossi Bachanin naktinan she'en kilkon lo lepar v'lo makulis. There is no chilik if it's chutz lekalkolin or outside of the kalkolin or inside lo lepar v'lo makulis. Not by these two avodah zaras. Lamai. If you're going to tell me even pnim, only dvarim shel noi is aser, just like chutz v'shari, but dvarim she'enu shel noi, which is inside the kalkolin, is mutter. Hashta pu'urim afarin kamei ma'im v'melech l'makriven le. What do you mean? The type of service you do is a degrading type of service. So ma'im v'melech, which is, I guess, cheap stuff, you're not going to be makriv to it. Elo afilu chutz k'befnem dami v'aser means the other way around. It means that even chutz, even if you put dvarim she'enoi shel noi b'chutz, it's also aser because of takroives. By the way, the word kolkolin really, Rashi says kinoi shel kloim. It means curtains. Kloim, really, the real word is kloim. The reason why they call it kilkolim is because kilkolin is b'lashon kilkul, right? It's ruins, and the Chachamim wanted to use that word when they're referring to Avodah Zarah, to be megana, to degrade the Avodah Zarah, and call it kilkul. So the Heilige Mishnah. What happens if you have the Avodah Zarah had a gina or a merchatz, and you want to use it? A yid wants to use it. Says the Mishnah, you're allowed to have a no as long as you don't pay money. You don't pay money for Savada, the Rishonim speak out. It's not the pshat that this ginor merchatz serves the avodah zarah, or it's part of the avodah zarah itself. No, it's bechlal not part of the avodah zarah. They just use the profits of this ginor merchatz to upkeep the avodah zarah. Gemara says, so you're not going to pay because they're going to use the money to upkeep the avodah zarah. What if there was a shutfus, right? This ginor merchatz belongs to avodah zarah and other people who don't serve avodah zarah. Then you can have a no, even if you pay. And we'll see in the Gemara a little bit more about this halacha. Excuse me. The avodah zarah of a guy is aser miyad, even before he served it. V'shal Yisrael ein asura ad shetayaved. But from Yisrael, it's not Osir until the Yisrael serves it. Okay, back to the first part of the Mishnah. Omer Abaye betoiva, betoivas kaimrin. What do you mean betoiva? I mean betoivas kaimrin. They're paying the priests of the Beis Avodah Zarah with the profits from the Ginar Merchatz. Shloi betoivas kaimrin. La'afuk betoivas avdeh deshari. If they use the profits, let's say to pay some of the people who come to serve the Avodah Zarah, that's not a problem. It's only if the money goes to the kaimrim, to the priests. Some learned this Abaye, the chilik and tevis kaimrim, or shleib tevis kaimrim, on the sefer of the Mishnah. When it says shelav shlachirim, nenamem tevis shleib teva, amar Abaye betoivim tevis achirim, shleib tevis kaimrim. Betoivim achirim means then it's betoivim, and then you're allowed to have a no from the Gina Merchatz because the money goes to the achirim. Shleib tevis kaimrim. So I guess you're not going as Bain and Bain. It's just make sure that if there's a shutfus, your money that you pay to use the Giner Merchatz is not going to the Avodah Zarah, to the Kaimim, it's only going to the other people. Yeah, Avada, in the ratio, yeah, you're not going to have enough in the Giner Merchatz when it's Kula Shaychas Avodah Zarah, when it's all going to the Avodah Zarah. Manda Masna Ratio, and those who learn Abaye's chiluk between tevis kaimim, shleib tevis kaimim, and the ratio, avla sefer even the kacherim bado, afilu betevis kaimim nami shapadam. It could be that when there's a shutfis, even if part of those profits go to the kaimim, it's okay. And it's mashman Rashi. The svar is because when there's a shutfis, then it's ano purta. It's mamash a very minimal benefit that the kaimim get from it, and you don't have to be choishish for that. That's not a problem. Okay. Zog the Gemara, avodas kachavim shel ovet kachavim asura meyad. The Avodah Zarah of a goy is also right when he builds it, but from a yid it's also only when he serves it. Masnisa mani Rabbi Kiva, it's Rabbi Kiva. Tanya abeta abdun eskol mekamis asher abdu shama goyim. It says in the Heilige Pasuk, in the Heilige Torah, it says, destroy all the places that the goyim serve their Avodah Zarahs. Gemara says, Mekaimus must be Mekalim. It's referring to the Kalim. Yochel. We're going to say later. Can't refer to the Mekaimus itself because that's Mechuber. That doesn't become Avodah Zarah. It doesn't become Osir. Mekalim shenishtam shelo l'tzcham v'kas medaber. Yochel osam v'le Gemara. I would have thought even if it just did it, but didn't serve it yet, still abed to abed, you have to destroy it. Gemara v'le'aviyom avim v'lenishtam shebehen yochli yasurim tamad leimer asher avdu shamagoyim. Once we know the pasuk is going on Kalim, and it says the lashon asher avdu shamagoyim is mashma that they have to serve it in order to become asher. She'ein asun at she avdu. Mikan omra v'es kam shlam v'cham in asun at she avdu shal Yisrael asura miyad divrei b'shmuel. B'shmuel says the opposite in the Mishnah, right? He says that the Avodah Zarah of a goy is only asher asher avdu shamagoyim until they serve it. Yisrael is asher miyad. B'kiva choylik v'omer chilaf advarim fakert. Avodah is kam shlam v'cham asura miyad. Yisrael at she aved. When a guy builds an Avodah Zarah, it's also right away. Yisrael only until he serves it. Amamar, and our mission is like Rabbi Kiva. Amamar b'kelim sh'tam sh'lo v'dikam ha'kas medaber. Rabbi Shmuel says that the Mekaimis is referring to Kalim. Whereas the Ay shteicham Mekaimis ksiv. Whereas no, main angel Mekaimis la mitzri. Can't refer to Mekaimis because they become aser. The chsiv Eloheim alaharim v'alaharim alaheim. Right? It says in the other pasuk we learned it earlier that Eloheim alaharim, only the gods on top of the mountains, but not a harim if they made the mountain into a god. You know why? Because a har itself doesn't have a din of a god. Ne'un l'kelim must be they're referring to kelim, not the mekaimis themselves. And on that it says asher avdu shamagoyim, right? That they served it. It says the Gemara, mikan amru avodas kacham shelav kacham in Yisrael shti aviv sh'Yisrael miyad. Says kelim akimnala. Asks the Gemara, you just established the pasuk by kelim that are meshamish the avodah zarah, and on that we say asher avdu shamagoyim. But how do you learn avodah zarah itself? It says in the same pasuk at the end over there, Asher avdu shamagoyim, Asher atam yoshim oisem esalehem, makish elehem lekelim. We compare elehem to kelim. Ma kelim atcheya avdu, afalehem nami atcheya avdu. So there, that's the makar for Rabbi Shmuel that avodah zarah of a goy is only aser until it's served, until the person serves it. Rabbi Kiva lemakish, he doesn't compare lehem to kelim. Omelach es hifsik inya. No, es is mafsik. Okay, so he does not mask him to the drash of Rabbi Shmuel. Now, we know, according to Rabbi Shmuel, how do we know? According to Rabbi Shmuel, we know according to Rabbi Shmuel, we know that Oived Kechavim, who makes an Avodah Zarah, it's not usher until he serves it. But what about Ashkan Avodah Zarah? Ashkan Avodah Zarah, Shalav Kechavim, then it's Yisrael Yisrael Dasur Miyad Minole. How do we know that Yisrael's Avodah Zarah is usher right away? So Gemara says Svaruhu. That's a Svara. Mit Oived Kechavim Mach the Aved, the Yisrael Asura Miyad. Since the Torah needed to teach me this halacha, that Abed the Abdon Eskalam HaKam Yisrael of Dusham Agoyim, that only destroy any Avodah Zarah that they actually serve, but if they built it, don't destroy it, is mashma, that otherwise it has to be destroyed right away. It's only the Goyim's Avodah Zarah that we wait until they serve it, that Asher of Dusham Agoyim requires Ibud at that point. But a Yisrael's would be Asr Miyad. So the Gemara says, how do you know to be Medayik that way? How do you know to be Medayik L'chumra? And with Yisrael klala, maybe go l'kula. Avodah Zarah, the guy, once he serves it, you have to destroy it. But Yisrael's, you never have to destroy it. Gemara says, no. Hashta gniza boya. We know that Avodah Zarah Yisrael needs gniza. You tell me it's Yisrael mitzvah, doesn't become Asr. Avada becomes Asr. So Avada, you have to be medayik the other way, l'chumra, that a Yisrael's Avodah Zarah becomes Asr right away. Asks the Gemara, ve'ema kidda oivet kechavim. Maybe say that Avodah Zarah Yisrael is like an Avodah Zarah of a guy. How do you know to separate? Gemara says, no, I'll tell you why. It says, when Moshe Rabbeinu reprimands Klal Yisrael about the egel, it says, "V'schataschem asher asisem as a egel." Mashma the chet is mishas asiyah. Eiman emil like make him gavra bechet. Maybe it's only make him gavra bechet, but it's the mitzvah. That's when you did the avera. But how do you know that the Zarah becomes usher from that point? Amakra orur isha sheyas pesla masecha mishas asiyah come le beorur. Yeah, he gets cursed from mishas asiyah. Make him gavra ba'orur again. Maybe that's when he receives his orur, but it's surah mitzvah. How do you know it's usher from that point as well? Says the Gemara, Toya vas Hashem ksiv. It says by the pesla maseicha. It says Toya vas Hashem at the end of that pasuk. So you see, mishas asiyah, it's already called Toya vas Hashem, which means you gotta distance yourself from it. Rabbi Akiva, and what Rabbi Akiva say? Right? Rabbi Akiva says that by Yisrael it's only Achti Ovid. What do you mean? It says Mishas Asiyah, it's a Toivus Hashem. No, it means Dover HaMevil de Ta'eva. It means because it's going to bring you to Ta'eva once you serve it. Okay. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Akiva, Avodas Kechavim Shlo V'chom Dasur Miyad Minole. How do you know Avodah Zarah Minole Kechavim Azasa Miyad? Rabbi Akiva is our Mishnah. The Mishnah says Avodas Kechavim right away, even before he serves it, it's Asr. How do we know that? As soon as you carve out this piece of stone or rock and you turn it into Avodah Zarah, even before you served it, it's already a god, it's already an Avodah Zarah, and you have to burn it because it's Asr Ba'ana. The Idach, what does Rabbi Shmuel do with that pasuk? Look at the Tanur of Yosef. The Tanur of Yosef, how do we know a guy can be mavatal, pasal his own god? He can pasal, psil is b'lashon psul, a bittul, that it can be pasal, he can pasal his own Avodah Zarah. The Idachaz Makiva, no, they can pasal his own Avodah Zarah if you use the word psile lehayim to darshan that it's osir miyad. Nafkol with the Shmuel Rami. Shmuel asks us to the chsiv. Lesach makazav aleihem ksiv lekachtu loch. One pasuk is mashma, you have to burn whatever is on the Avodah Zarah. It's osir b'ana. One pasuk says you can take it to yourself. Okay, tzad. Depends what you did with it. If you're mavatla, you could take it. Or if the guy was mavatla, then you could take it. If the guy wasn't mavatla, then l'sachmod, you're not. It's asabana. So you see that bittul works for a guy. Okay, so now I have a makar psil lahem tis from the eish mishas psol nasalahai. I understand. It says tis from the eish. I know it's asabana right away. But the Yisrael to the Ovid Minol, and how do I know that if a Yid builds an Avodah Zarah, it's only Asr until he serves it? It's not Asr until he serves it. It says in the end of Orah Isha Sheyasa Pesel, Masechet Tevis Hashem, V'sam Basasr means you can't have an anah from it. until you do the avodah of the Avodah Zarah, which you usually do b'seiser. The idach, whom a boy look at Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Shmuel says, nah, don't darshan from there that a Yisrael's Avodah Zarah is only osir mishas avodah, because that v'sam basaser I learned the din of Rabbi Yitzchak. How do I know Yisrael's Avodah Zarah can never become bottle? You need geniza. That's because it says v'sam basaser. The idach has Makiva know that. Nafkalim with Rav Chizda. Amar Rav, the Amar Chizda Amar Rav, and Amar it's called Shal Yisrael Shtieble Geniza. Shenamar Lasitul Chasher Kol Eitz L'Mizbach Hashem. Ma Mizbeach Torah Geniza, just like Mizbeach needs Geniza, because it's Aser Ba'ano, it's Hegdish. Af Hasher to Una Geniza. So to Hasher is Tuna Geniza, which means Lasitul Lacha Hasher, referring to Hasher of a Jew, of a Yid. So you see, it can never become bottle. The Idach. What's Rabbi Shmuel going to do with this drush of Lasitul Lacha Hasher if he learns it from the Sam Basaser? Says the Gemara, who look at the Rish Lakish? The Amr Shlokish kol hamam medayin she'enu hagon ki ilo netei hasheira b'Yisrael. She'nemer shoiftim she'etim l'chem chasherecha v'samach le'yisid l'chasher kol eitz. V'ravashi v'kom tamid l'chacham ki l'atoy etz l'mizbach she'nemer etz l'mizbach Hashem. Okay, so he learns that you're not allowed to be mamed dayin she'enu hagon b'Yisrael because of le'yisid l'chasher kol eitz etz l'mizbach Hashem. Okay, we'll stop over here.